All right, let me know when you guys can see and hear me, and let us pray it works the first try this time. Both in the live chat and in the Moore's Law is Dead after video chat channel, please. Can you guys hear me? Waiting to see here. Yeah, the live chat on YouTube, Soup Wizard, and then also the after video chat channel on the Moore's Law said Discord where the patrons are. All right. It seems like everybody here can hear me, although I'm a little disappointed in the radio silence in the Discord. Right. Okay. There we go. Also, that's where I usually learn what the delay is for us. And it seems like it's usually about 10 seconds or so of a delay between you guys hearing what I say and I saying it. Yeah, all right, finally, here we are at the end of September live stream, or as I call it, loose ends. This is where I close up some, as is in the title, loose ends, things that maybe were missed, things that I really didn't talk about, but I want to get to, and just answer questions about all those things. And as usually happens, there's usually breaking news or some leak that comes out in the beginning, and that is no different this time, as I do want to start with Xbox. But then I do want to clarify some things about the RTX 50 Super and just take a ton of Q&A and give more thoughts on Nvidia's partnership with Intel for the future of their integrated graphics and the future of Nvidia's ability to get x86. All right, here we go. Let us get into the first one here. Put down a timestamp, which I know you are also desperate for in the future. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about today is the ROG Xbox Ally price. And first of all, I will be having the Fox on Moore's Law is Dead's Broken Silicon podcast next week. Actually, I'll put out the request for listener questions probably in the next 4 hours. So I will say that if you are a patron, look out for that. And if you thought about joining the patron and you want to ask the Fox, so I think is really one of the best, if not the best, APU in handheld, and therefore that means laptop and mobility testers and tweakers out there. He just completed the GPD Strix Halo testing, or he's, I think, in the middle of it actually. He has a lot to say about the Xbox Ally X handheld. You want to ask him questions. The lowest tier, $1 tier, gets access to asking him questions. So if you've been on the fence and interested in any of those subjects, join the Patreon for that. But the point is, I will talk about the ROG Xbox Ally X for like 2 hours. The Qualcomm, PlayStation, Medusa, Halo, RDNA 5. So I think you're going to get much more of my opinion in next week's Broken Silicon. But what I will say right now is my initial reactions to them announcing that the Xbox Ally X is $1,000. And two things immediately come to mind about this. Now, first of all, the first thing is this is not priced to take market share at all. I know I'm stating the obvious, but I'm gonna state it because maybe it'll sell well. I'll be surprised if it sells well, especially when you can get cheaper products, or I would argue better design ones. Like I think the Legion Go 2 or whatever it's called looks kind of more interesting to me because you could actually use something this expensive as a tablet. Like, hear me out. Once you get a handheld beyond $600, $700, I start to think of it as a laptop. Like, I'm not getting, at least I'm not a billionaire, right? I'm not getting a handheld that costs as much as a premium laptop unless I can kind of use it as one. And like, for example, the Legion Go S2 or whatever is big enough where you kind of can just use it as a tablet. I think that's an interesting idea. I don't want to get it myself, but I think that's an interesting way to play with it. Or another maybe exception would be the GPD Win 5, which, yeah, I mean, what? It goes up to $1,700 or something, but it's so much stronger. I mean, you're getting something that if you dock it can game as well as a PlayStation 5 or better. Or, I mean, you're getting like almost mid-range graphics in a handheld, and that's nuts on like a 1080p 120 hertz display. You're gonna max out every game at 1080p 120. I mean, you'll probably even be able to play Borderlands 4, So I know that costs more than the Xbox Ally X, but it's so much more powerful that I go, look, that's the rich person enthusiast handheld. Okay. And then you've got other interesting things. $1,000 for the Xbox Ally X. This is not priced to take market share. It's not the most premium thing you can get. And it's also not doing the most interesting things. It's just trying to compete directly with Steam Deck's OS. And that's why, and so that was the first thing is I don't think that this is um, priced to take market share at all. I know it's sold out probably, but we don't know how many they even had for pre-order. It's also sold out. The GPD Win 5. Does that mean that's going to outsell the Steam Deck? No, we don't know how many they put up for pre-order, and we won't know that for months, probably. So it's not priced to take market share, it's priced to milk its fans. And I think what you see with the raising of prices of the Series X to $800. What is the Series S at? Isn't it like 450 or something? Like, it's very obvious that where Xbox is at now, and I'm just calling balls and strikes, guys. I'm not going to pussyfoot around this. They're done trying to take market share. Their job is to now milk 10 to 30 million people that still buy everything Xbox releases. And that's how you get a $1,000 console. So I think from now on, we should stop thinking about Xbox as this thing that's going to directly try to compete with Nintendo or Sony or really even Steam. And where we should look at it as is kind of the incubator for gaming features for Windows that milks 10 to 30 million fans that for some reason will never give up on a brand that I don't know, just seems to kind of hate them at this point, their fans. I'm just being honest. So that's what Xbox is now. It is an incubator for Windows, which I think is good because I game on Windows. So if they release these devices that are beta testing a new gaming OS on a handheld, which is much weaker than most desktops. And then once that works well, they take it from there and then let Lenovo use it and everyone else use it. And that makes Windows gaming better. I'm all for that as a PC gamer. That's kind of what I think the Xbox brand is now, playing around with other gaming things and then taking the things that work and scaling it up on Windows, or whether it's a VR partnership with a Meta device. All of this is Xbox kind of just doing polling and beta testing on gaming features that they would use for other products in the future. That's what Xbox is. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing that comes to mind when I see $1,000 Xbox Ally X is just 1 year ago. This isn't like 5 years ago. This isn't like from the Xbox One era, something Phil Spencer said in response to a PS4 or some expensive desktop. Like, this is Phil Spencer talking 1 year ago. He said, we're not going to grow the market with $1,000 consoles. Now, I made a funny tweet where I quoted that and I said, wow, Phil Spencer should really tell Phil Spencer this. But look at a year ago, he was making fun of the PlayStation 5 Pro's price. And in just 12 months, or I guess 13, we've seen Xbox raise the Series X pricing above the PS5 Pro, which is a hilarious joke. Raise Series S pricing above really many PCs that you can get for less money that will perform better than a Series S. So the Game Pass argument doesn't really hold for the Series S anymore. You get a cheaper PC that'll perform better and just get Game Pass on that. And Game Pass, isn't it cheaper on PC or something than it is if you want all of the Xbox features on a console? So you're going to save money that way as well. And then, yeah, just think about that. Making fun of a $1,000 console, which the PS5 Pro wasn't, then raising their own console to a higher price than the PS5 Pro, and literally launching a $1,000 handheld. What that tells me is two things. Either Phil Spencer is the biggest hypocrite and least trustworthy person on earth, and it could be it could be both of these things. He's just not in charge of Xbox anymore. I don't know how else you read this. Phil Spencer saying a $1,000 console is basically a bad idea. A year later, a $1,000 console launches. That Phil Spencer's not in charge, right? That's probably what's going on here. Because at a minimum, I don't think he would have been making those statements if he thought he had any control over that happening in the future. Because I don't think he wants. You could say he's not trustworthy. I don't think he wants to look stupid though, and this makes him look stupid. So, yeah, that's basically where I think we're at. Is Xbox is now about trying to stay in the black with the existing fans they have, which is clearly 10 to 30 million people that buy up most of what they make, and they're just done trying to expand that market share. And then they're going to use that group of fans to beta test features. Right now, the Xbox Ally X is beta testing a SteamOS competitor for Windows, which is great for PC gamers, but it's not going to do well, I don't think. And I don't think it's going to age that well compared to like the PlayStation handheld or the Steam Deck too. I mean, speaking of the Steam Deck, the cheaper one, the Xbox Ally with only 8 RDNA 2 compute units in 2025, it's double the price of the Steam Deck almost, right? Like the Steam Deck just had a price drop or promotion at least for a $320 Steam Deck LCD, and you want the Ally to be $600. I know it has a better screen, but I can tell you what, 8 RDNA 2 compute units are not going to be running any games at 1080p 120 in 2025. So I don't know. I mean, I think at that point, you know, and to do that right after Steam Deck ran this promotion, it's a joke. Also, remember that SteamOS will be more efficient as well. So I really don't have that much to say about the Xbox Ally X. I mean, there's other decent handhelds for a similar price or less. The Steam Deck 2 is going to be a lot faster. The PlayStation handheld is going to be faster and cheaper. And I guess I just hope Sony doesn't take the bait, you know, and Nintendo. I mean, Nintendo could raise prices on the Switch too. They don't take the bait, and just because one competitor is pricing things too high, they go, that means we have to price things too high. You know, the classic example of this, um, that I like to bring up at least, of following your competitor's actions like they're good decisions, even though maybe you should just ignore bad decisions your competitor makes, is when Nvidia announced the 4080 12 gigabyte for $900. And then AMD was like, yes, we'll launch the 7900 XT 20 gigabyte for $900. You know, it's going to be faster. It's going to have over 50% more RAM. And they were like, this is a slam dunk. I mean, Hardware Unboxed, go watch the last couple episodes, Hardware Unboxed on Broken Silicon. He opens up about this with me. Like, he said he was on the phone with an AMD rep who's like, well, how could you say the 7900 XT is a bad deal? It's got 20 gigabytes, not 12. And it's like, AMD just didn't think for a second that maybe the 4080 12 gigabyte was a horrible idea. And it was, and NVIDIA unlaunched it. And they look stupid. I hope Sony doesn't do the same thing, like follow their competition off a cliff. Like, just because your competition is doing something doesn't mean you should adjust your products to a bad decision they're making. But anyways, that's my opinions on the Xbox Ally X, and I worry about what that means for future console pricing. But we'll have to see. All right. Also, make sure you like, everybody. There's over 400 people watching. Let's get over 400 likes, please. And now let's move on to the subject that I think most of you were probably clicking on for, if I had to guess. Could be wrong though. I guess there's a few juicy subjects today. So RTX 50 Super. So yeah, look, there was an inflammatory article written, I don't know what it was, a couple weeks ago, or let's just say this month, that was clearly taking shots at me and my team members that are trying to work hard to get you guys accurate information early. And it comes from this clickbait journalist who's kind of disgraced at this point in a lot of circles, not taken very seriously. But I have to say, this buffoon that was like attacking my 50 Super leak regarding the release date, I don't think this person watched my video, because and this happens all the time. I feel like I am being uh gaslit by the haters who are like, can you believe Moore's Law is dead said this? And then, you know, a couple months will go by, or even a few weeks, and I will just have, you know, kind of forgotten a little bit of what was in my video. I'm already moving on to other things. You know, now I'm thinking about Titan Lake and what else am I working, and like Xbox Magnus leaks that I'm working on. I'm not thinking about 50 Super. I put out some information, and then you see all these reports like, you know, the release date isn't this, Tom didn't say that. And it's like, yeah, that's not even what I said when I actually go back and rewatch the video or look at what I said. So, two things about the recent attacks on this channel about the RTX 50 Super leak. First of all, and there was someone sent me some clips that showed weird attacks, like I'd copied someone's information. Any recent RTX Super leaks basically copied 80% of what I said half a year ago. I keep saying this, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I had the information I had a half a year ago. I'm sure another leaker had more information because it was later, a month ago. And then I added more information that I had a month after that. Like, this is how this goes. More information comes out over time. And if you're a reliable leaker, you just kind of have access to more when you're closer to the launch. So any accusation of that is ridiculous, because this is a website that shamelessly ran article after article about people that just ran the same information I had already said. But that out of the way, the release date thing. And this is the most important thing. when I re-looked at I expected myself to have said something else. When I looked back at my RTX 50 Super uh leak and looked at the release date portion, I openly said the 5080 Super might come out next year. There was no doubling down that like of any specific date for these products. I said the RTX 5080 Super is going to launch maybe this quarter, or I could see it launching next quarter, like at CES, to head off AMD's potential refresh products. I still think that's possible. And then for the 5070 Super and 5070 Ti Super, I didn't double down on any release date. I said it looks like it's ready to launch in October, but I don't have a specific date. So think about what I said. 5080 Super, this or next quarter, 5070 and 5070 Ti Super would be ready to launch in October if they want to. It seems set to. They've told partners they might, but I don't have a specific date. Does that sound like I doubled down on some imminent release date in a week or something? I didn't. So I don't know. There's some weird haterade drinkers out there. And I just wanted to clarify that because, and I think half of the time my response should just be, and it usually is actually, go watch what I actually said. So I want to be, very clear about this. I wouldn't be surprised, in other words, right, if these products launched at CES or something. Like, that wouldn't surprise me at all. And in fact, if the 5080 Super is increasingly looking like it'll be quarter one, then I don't see why you might not make the other ones wait as well, especially when you can see that like Super sales aren't going that great. I mean, what's the current update here? I think some of them have picked up. I'm not Super Nvidia sales. Let's see. GPU bestseller Newegg. Like, where are we at? I'm surprised if Nvidia picked up a little bit lately because Nvidia's prices are dropping because, well, they're not selling. Okay, yeah. So like right now, best GPU sellers on Newegg. Number one, 9060 XT, and it's sold out. Number two, 9070 XT. Number three, as always, 3060 12 GB. Number four, 5070. Okay, that one's gone up. But it's at MSRP or lower, so that's why it's going up. The 96, and I think that's important to be clear about, right? Like when you talk about Nvidia sales picking up this month, right? But the 9060 is sold out at the number one spot on Newegg. And number two is a 9070 XT that is $70 above MSRP. It's only when you get to number four that you get to a Blackwell card, the 5070, at or below MSRP. So think about that differential. At least on Newegg, the 9070 XT seems to be outselling the 5070 despite it being above MSRP and the 5070 being at or below. That still tells you there's a greater desire for AMD. And what's right after the 5070? Number five spot on Newegg. 9060 XT above MSRP. Then 9060 XT sold out. Then 5070 Ti 16 gigabytes sold out, but probably below MSRP. The 9070 XT above MSRP, 9070 XT above MSRP, 9060 XT above MSRP, 6600 makes sense, budget card, and then 5070 Ti finally one above MSRP. So that is, they still have a lot of these cards to get rid of, and they might just drop them to below MSRP and try to dump them during the Christmas season. Nvidia might before launching Super, and that wouldn't surprise me at all. And that's basically it. I don't have any other updates. Like at this point, if they launch Super this year, yeah, I guess I'd tentatively expect late October or November if they did it. And it wouldn't surprise me if it was early next year. And you go watch my leak, I even openly said I thought at least one of the cards could launch early next year. So let's be clear about that. That doesn't change my recommendation, though. I wouldn't buy any of these products. I think they're going to be replaced immediately, well, by early next year by vastly superior products with 24 or 18 gigabytes of RAM. And I want to be clear about this. Were the 5080 to have 20 gigabytes, right? Were the 5070 to have 16 gigabytes? No, I wouldn't tell you to wait for a 5070 Ti or a 5070 Super that goes from like 16 to 18 gigabytes. I wouldn't tell you to wait for a 5080 Super that goes from 20 to 24 gigabytes. I would say you could probably save a little money now, get most of the performance, and the RAM isn't a huge deal. But going from 12 to 18 gigabytes on what will probably be a $600 card, yeah, that's like a game changer in how usable that card is and how long it will last. And going from 16 to 24 gigabytes is going to make the 5080 Super, especially once you add the like 10%, overclock it will get. That's going to make that just a full-on 4090 that lasts way longer than the 5080 will. Already there's games that push up against 16 gigabytes of RAM and 4K, So no, I think you wait. Do not get it. Nothing about my advice changes whatsoever here. And then the final thing I have to say about RTX 50 Super that I think is also missed, um, is that I believe there's no founders. Like, I believe it's all AIB coolers, and the configuration for the 5080 Super and 5070 Ti Super are the same, like literally the same CUDA core count based on at least what my sources told me. Even the 5070 Super is like what, a 4% increase in CUDA cores, so basically nothing. What am I saying this for? They basically already have the coolers, guys. Like, same basic core counts. All they're going to do is put different memory chips and go from like whatever, I don't remember off the top of my head, like 360 watts to 420 watts or whatever. That's not an exact number. I just don't remember the exact. Their coolers are already built for that much heat, guys. I don't think the AIBs need a lot of warning to prepare for these launches. They literally just need like a month before the launch, 3 weeks maybe. Nvidia could do at least a paper launch. It's the same coolers, same configurations, and nothing changes. Just put a super sticker on the box. This is probably the least, from a technical point of view, the least change in specs we've seen in a Super Series. I know it will feel bigger because they're going from 612 to 18 gigabytes with the 5070 Super, but in reality, this is a very small change. And all of their coolers are already built to handle this, and they don't need to worry about founders. So, yeah, that's why I would also say, like, whenever NVIDIA wants to press go, I think the ramp from go to launch will be one of the shortest we've seen. So that is another reason why NVIDIA would keep AIBs in the dark as long as possible. But anyways, I thought that was important. I wasn't planning to address this, but when I re-looked at my video, I'm like, dude's totally misquoting what I said. Like, at a minimum, you would say at most I half said it would launch this year. I mean, come on. Um, all right, but yeah, so that's that. And let me now. Next up, we will get to Nvidia swallowing Intel. We have a ton of questions about that, so I wanted to say that. Let me see what the other tipped questions are. They're all APU questions, so I'm going to hold those. So keep the tipped questions coming in. We will get to them as quickly as possible. And by the way, this will probably be more like an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 20. So you're not going to want to wait if you want to send in a question. But before I get to the questions, and there are many about NVIDIA and Intel partnering together, I have to do an ad from ZipRecruiter. This live stream is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Finding great candidates to hire can be as time-consuming as finding clickbait websites that correctly quote what I say. Waiting for the right candidates to apply is hard, and sorting through resumes is tiresome, and trying to get in touch even with potential candidates and candidates that you might find and they're good, but are also actively looking for jobs, those aren't always the same candidate, and it can be very hard. And that is where ZipRecruiter comes in. The future of hiring looks much brighter than the future of clickbait journalism, therefore, and that's because ZipRecruiter's latest tools and features help speed up finding the right people for your role. So they save you valuable time. And now you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/work. And you really should, because with ZipRecruiter's new advances, you can easily find and connect with qualified candidates in minutes. And if you see a candidate that you're interested in, you can unlock their contact info instantly. Plus, over 320,000 resumes are added to ZipRecruiter monthly, which means you can reach more potential hires and fill roles sooner. So support Moore's Law is Dead for free by using ZipRecruiter and saving time hiring. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And if you go to ZipRecruiter.com/work right now, again, for free, you can try it. And trying it for free, clicking on that link right now, just scrolling down and clicking it, helps me a ton. So again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/work. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. All right, now let us move on to I guess let's use a blue light for this just for fun. The Intel NVIDIA partnership. So I've already put out, obviously, the Intel NVIDIA APU leak, where I basically say that Hammer Lake is possibly the first APU to use it, although there is a decent chance that Titan Lake will. I'm starting to get good at Intel code names again now that I'm following them closely, closer than I have been recently, right? So just so people know, right now, we're about to have a Panther Lake launch for mobile in a few months, and then say 10 months after that, maybe 11 probably, Nova Lake will launch to desktop. Then that will be late 26, early 27. You'll have Nova Lake Mobile most likely roll out, and then probably mid to late that year, you will get Nova Lake Halo to complete with Medusa Halo, a Zen 6 Halo. And then after that, you'll get Razor Lake probably at the very end of 27 or early 28. And then you'll get Titan Lake around a year after that, but that's only mobile. And then you'll get Hammer Lake. What am I saying? Yeah, like N27 through 29 is when we're probably going to see the first NVIDIA Intel APUs, with it most likely being, late 2028 at the earliest, I would say. But anyways, so just recapping everybody on that. And again, the partnership with Intel and Nvidia, just to get to that side of it, not the technical side. Nvidia is working with Intel to get better access to integrating x86 processors with their data center GPUs for AI and server. This is a huge deal for Nvidia because, apparently AMD has been taking a ton of server market share that Nvidia thinks they could have gone where they have x86 CPUs, despite what the Army, and I say that as capitalized A, capitalized R, capitalized M, and then a Y, the ARM fanboys think. There are still a lot of people that want to use x86, and it's still a very high performance architecture for data center. So this is good for NVIDIA in allowing them to maybe keep up in that regard. But then for Intel and also for NVIDIA, like let's say that NVIDIA's ARM APU architecture doesn't do well. The N1X, which should come out early next year, it's going to be an interesting laptop year next year. It's going to be interesting. NVIDIA versus Panther Lake versus Zen 6 APUs, Gorgon Point, Budget Strix Halo. It's going to be a great laptop year next year, I think. But let's say NVIDIA's N1X NPU with ARM cores doesn't work out. Well, this allows them to stay in laptop aggressively because, yes, they control what is it? I mean, I know I poo-poo the numbers for NVIDIA market share overall, but when it comes to laptop, yeah, I don't know. I think NVIDIA might have 99% of the laptop GPU market. Certainly over 90% if I had to guess. That is a powerful position to be in now, but that's only if you think about dedicated graphics. Pretty soon, most, if not already, I think actually most laptops don't have dedicated graphics, and that's going to keep growing. And mark my words, Lisa Su's going to go out at CES, and she's going to basically announce the Zen 2 moment of chiplets is coming to APUs for the first time, everybody. Strix Halo was the first one we tried, and now we're going to be sharing chiplets with RDNA 5 chiplets with desktop and Xbox and APUs, and she'll probably tease all of that. It won't come out in the beginning of 26, but I believe she will tease this sort of stuff to allay investor fears that NVIDIA Intel is going to screw them. NVIDIA is worried about that. Like they know that if they don't have a firm foothold in something besides their own ARM cores, like an x86 APU they can be a part of, that AMD, if they start pushing Intel out of laptop, that means they start pushing NVIDIA out of laptop. So that's why NVIDIA is doing that. And from Intel's point of view, I mean, look, before I say this, let me say this other thing too. I am glad that Intel is going to for sure, well, I shouldn't say for sure, is much more likely going to be able to compete well against AMD APUs in a few years with the helping of NVIDIA, just because the alternative is that AMD might just become the next Intel. Like everyone needs to think about that. And AMD is at 40% server revenue share. 40%. They're going to get above 50. They're going to start having more than Intel. They're already at 40% desktop revenue share. They will get above 50 within a year, I bet. They're going to do it. They're going to be above 50% in two big markets. And Intel failed to get into AI, and they even admit it. So you have AMD poised to get above 50% revenue share in desktop, in server, and they have lucrative contracts coming in for AI. No, they're not as big as NVIDIA, but that's still a huge lifeline of revenue and a successful niche that they have carved out that I think they will successfully defend. They will have a part of the AI pie that Intel doesn't have. So if they're dominating server, dominating desktop, and they are getting fat on AI sales that Intel isn't, I'm worried they would just become the next Intel in 5 years, were it to not be that Intel has something else propping them up a little bit. So I said this in my recent video, and I'm going to say it again. Give it a couple years before you freak out, because I think you're going to be begging, for Intel to have something backing them up here. But anyways, that's my thoughts on that. And I just don't want, and also I don't want AMD to be able to get lazy. I don't want them, the second they get above, get to 60% market share in a few markets, to just go, and now we get to kick back. Because I don't think they would ever slow down as much as Intel did, but I can bet you they would take it a little easier. Now that they know Nvidia's coming with Intel in like 3 or 4 years, now they know that they've got a fire lit under their ass. AMD knows they've got to go balls to the walls, light speed over the next few years, and that's going to bring us so much laptop competition before Intel's even able to really compete well there. And then maybe there will be a foothold in the market, and maybe we're going to see APU showdowns in a few years that we could have never dreamed of before. All right, so that's my good news. That's the nice pitch. Look, the downside that I didn't really touch on because it's just stating the obvious is obviously what this does is fully end arc. I mean, I know that Celestial, I've leaked it, so no one's telling me anything I don't know. Celestial is going to come out as a GPU tile, and it'll get Halo offerings probably, but over time it's going to probably be relegated to budget, and that's not really competing. You know, Intel is not. Again, that's why I say effectively canceled. Intel is not effectively competing. They're not going to compete with the 6090, 6080, 6070, 6060, probably not even 6050. That's not competing. Right. That means that, I mean, if you look at the B580, that's not competing. They have zero market share based on pretty much every poll and analysis out there. The B580 is there because Nvidia and AMD let it exist. If AMD wanted to, they could drop something that had 12 gigabytes for a lower price. If Nvidia wanted to, right now, they could give the 50, 60, 12 gigabytes of RAM and drop it to 250. And they could afford to do it. They're not choosing to. They're letting Intel have 0.1% of the GPU market so they can say it's not a monopoly. That's not really competing. So what Nvidia is also doing, if we're being honest here, is ensuring that if Intel recovers, and they want them to recover so that AMD can't push them out of laptop, that Intel will be apprehensive to going for high-end GPU ever again. And that is unfortunate, right? Because although I leaked a few years ago, or was it 2? I don't know. It's a few years ago, that the roadmap Intel had put out for ARC was complete bullshit. And now we know it was. Battle Mage didn't launch in 23. Celestial didn't launch in 24. There's been no enthusiast products. Even though that's come true, I did, and you can go look at my previous videos, hope that maybe they could go into hibernation. I think I literally said that in the effectively canceled leak, that I want them to go into hibernation and then pop back out with whatever comes after Druid. What would it be? Elf or something, like Elven lore, like Elven Archer or whatever they would call it for the E. And maybe then they could take a run at it again when their company has a lot more money, because they don't right now. They don't have the money to do it. I do think that this partnership with Nvidia is Nvidia kind of putting their thumb on the scale a little and going, don't hibernate. Don't, and I don't think Jensen would have made this deal with Intel if they thought Intel was just going to pop out with a high-end GPU anytime soon. Like, Nvidia wouldn't do that. I spoke with people at Nvidia that directly said we would never do a deal with Intel if they were going to do that. So that is the downside. That is the negative of this, is maybe someday Intel will pop back out with high-end GPUs. I shouldn't say back out. They never had a single high-end GPU. Maybe someday Intel will take another crack at making a high-end GPU in a decade. But if it's going to happen, it's probably going to be in a decade. It's not going to be in 5 years, because Nvidia is just going to make sure it doesn't happen for the time being. But here's the thing. While that sounds negative, it's only really that negative if you're one of those ARC stands coping. Intel wouldn't even have the money to go for that again if they wanted to for that much time, probably anyways. And so this allows Intel to stop wasting money on products that were never going to compete, put all of their money into making their core architectures better. Guys, Nova Lake has to succeed, not Celestial. Nova Lake has to succeed. That architecture has to do well against Zen 6, at least be competitive. It can't be like Arrow Lake, or I don't know what's going to happen to Intel. Like, it is not about Celestial anymore. And if you look at the amount of spending Radeon and GeForce are doing on R&D, and the fact that, from what I hear, it's basically a skeleton crew on the ARC teams, there's no way they would have caught up for a while. So yes, Nvidia's putting their thumb on the scale, but also, for Intel to not make high-end cards for a very long time. But also, yes, they weren't going to be able to afford to anyways. I mean, and that's, you fail basic math if you think that they had the money to keep competing in ARC. And I'm not saying a lot of people are stupid that said they would. I am saying it was cope, though. Like, All you had to do was look at their earnings for 5 fucking seconds, and you would see that Intel was not gonna be able to do what they said they wanted them to do with Arc after we saw how Battle Mage turned out, right? Where it didn't even come to laptop, where nothing launched right in 2023, and they just had like a was it like December, uh, end of this like second half of December or something, they launched the B580 and it has massive overhead issues. Like, guys, they don't have the money to go any further. So, it is what it is. Any look at their earnings would have told you that. But yeah, so that is my thoughts on that. And, I'm sure I'll have more stuff to say about this moving forward, but I am not worried about a monopoly at the moment. Let's just put a pin on that thought. I'm not. I think everyone needs to remember Intel, Nvidia, all this stuff isn't going to come out for a few years. And AMD's almost a 50% revenue share in multiple markets. And they're probably going to be to 60 or more by then, with maybe 40% just straight up laptop or 50% laptop market share. And by then, we're going to need something to be lighting a fire under AMD's ass so they don't become the next Intel. And mark my words, as strong as Nvidia is looking right now, and obviously they have a stranglehold on AI, when it comes to actual consumer products, again, I've got the Newegg bestsellers next to me, AMD, old Nvidia, AMD. Like, AMD is showing warning signs that they're ready to be more serious in graphics soon, and that when it comes to APU, any Intel market share they take from laptop is market share they can push Nvidia out of. And you'd be surprised how quickly that could have snowballed into AMD almost having a semi-monopoly on laptop x86. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So at least that's my take. And we can complain about monopolies when there is one to complain about. But otherwise, right now, there's not. NVIDIA's working on their own APU with ARM cores for early next year. Intel's working on their own APU for early next year with Panther Lake. AMD's got a bunch of APUs coming out early next year. Apple's got their own APUs coming out. Qualcomm just announced the Snapdragon X2 Elite. Qualcomm, Apple, Nvidia, Intel, AMD. Right now, there are 5 companies making their own APUs. 5. That's not no one has monopoly. In 3 years, will Intel and Nvidia be a monopoly? I don't think so. We'll have to see, because they'll still be competing with AMD, Apple, and Qualcomm. So that's at least 4 players. Samsung too, if you count them. I don't know that I really count Samsung right now, though. They're going through a rough patch. But anyways, that's my extended rant about that. Let me move on to some questions about Intel x Nvidia. Put down another timestamp. Again, everybody, please make sure to double check that you are subscribed to the channel, like the video, share the video, comment down below when you can, and send that tip question in if you have one, because probably going to do this only another 30 minutes. All right, Matthew Cassels writes in and says, any comments on Raptor Lake drivers for iGPU being abandoned already by Intel? Intel is moving to a legacy software support, he's quoting, for the 11th generation through 14th processor graphics. Does that mean NVIDIA tiles on an Intel CPU will get longer driver updates? Yeah, I mean, that's actually something I would commend NVIDIA for, wouldn't all of you? NVIDIA tends to support their products a decently long time with driver support, longer than AMD on average. And so, yeah, that will mean that things will last longer. I do want to touch on this, though, the Intel driver support thing with APUs. It's insanely anti-consumer, what Intel just did here. They even are launching rebranded, I believe, Comet-like products as the i5-110. And take this for what you will. Maybe there is still something out there. But I checked the official support page for the i5-110, and it showed no drivers. Like, so they're launching a new product without driver support. What the fuck, Intel? And I want to say that too. To anybody that's like, Intel definitely can support a bunch of high-end graphics cards over guys, they're launching new graphics products now that don't even have integrated graphics driver support. Like, they do not have the money to support this. In fact, the only reason we're probably going to get okay Celestial products is because they're axing development on all this other stuff, like dedicated guards and future things that they couldn't afford to do. So I don't know. It's anti-consumer. And anyone who thinks Intel can afford to keep going on with Arc while making tons of dedicated graphics cards, guys, they can't even afford to launch new APUs with even if not even working drivers, with drivers you can download, like the i5-110. Look it up; it's insane. So That tells you the state of that. And that tells you why they probably went with Nvidia, because they had to, not because they wanted to. Matthew Cassels writes in yet again. It says XE super sampling is not, he's quoting, XE super sampling is not supported. Intel has bad documentation. And they're refusing to help me whatsoever. So he's quoting a Skyrim mod person. Yeah, I mean, and I think he's also said similar things. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go down an Intel bashing train here. I've said my piece. I don't want to just bring up examples of them failing. The i5 one was a bad one, Matthew. What I would say is, yeah, I mean, look, XE super sampling is very bad support track record, and I don't want an Intel APU that has no official graphics drivers in 3 years. I want an Intel APU with an Nvidia tile that kicks AMD's ass and makes AMD continue to innovate. What happened to people wanting innovation? Like all these people too who are wrong about ARC are now telling you to believe them about a monopoly thing. It's just, I don't get it. Dylan K writes in, good evening, Tom. With the Celestial and Panther Lake leaks recently released, how many generations of good products do you think it will take Intel to rebuild the bridges that they burned over the last 4 years? Let me actually put the timestamp here. Intel's, yeah, rebuilding relationships. So, yeah, Dylan's question, how long will it take them to rebuild the bridges they've burned with OEMs over the last 4 years? I mean, look, it has to start somewhere. I would say what the good news from Intel's perspective is they still technically have most of the laptop market, right? And they do. They do have most of the laptop market firmly. And so if they were to turn things around by Nova Lake, I think that would stop a complete snowballing of AMD. Would it be enough because AMD is already almost a half revenue share, right? Maybe AMD's at 20 or 30% laptop CPU market share. I don't remember what exactly it is, but their revenue share is at 40%. This is the same thing that happened when right before Nvidia crushed Radeon. People may not remember this, but around 2008, 7 through 10, AMD, I think at one point got up to 60% GPU market share. I know. If you just got into PC gaming recently, that sounds like a bygone era that only dinosaurs like me would remember. But there was an era 15, 20 years ago where AMD Radeon, or actually I should say ATI, where ATI was up to, I think, 60% of the graphics market. And then something happened with the 5000 series where they crushed it. Amazing reviews. All-time high probably in market share was around the 5000 series or 4000 series from ATI. And then what happens? Nvidia just keeps trucking, spending more on R&D, and Nvidia's revenue was like 60%. Well, AMD's market share was 60%. Well, think about what that means. AMD is selling maybe 50% more GPUs than Nvidia, but Nvidia is making 50% more money. So per card, Nvidia is making substantially more than AMD. And what does that lead to? It leads to, over time, a war of attrition that you lose, where your competition maybe only defended 40% market share, but like a war, we have a war of attrition between two sides, and one side only holds 40% of a country. Then they just eventually break out because the other side was just losing too much to try to hold that 60%. I've seen this in so many wars in the past. One going on right now, I would say, where one side's throwing a ton of resources away for another side that seems to just be waiting for them to wear themselves out. That's kind of what it looks like right now with Intel and AMD. And that's what happened with Radeon and GeForce, where, I don't know, I mean, just over time, one side just had more money and then they could afford to go for the win. And that's something that you got to worry about quite a bit with Intel if they don't get their act together, bringing it full circle, almost completely went off subject, in the next 2 years. Because AMD's almost at 50% revenue. If they get to 60% and Intel hasn't gotten some goodwill back, I don't know if that matters, because now AMD just has more money and they can just outspend them and get to that market share. So, what's it going to take for Intel to get back their goodwill? I think Panther Lake needs to surprise OEMs. Watch my Panther Lake leak, by the way. It seems to be flying under the radar. It's an exhaustive look at the new AMD Gorgon Point and Strix Halo competition. You'll be able to see against Intel. There's a lot of signs. We'll have 1,000 to 1,500 to like $2,000 Strix Halo laptops, meaning plenty of $1,500 ones next year. Well, Gorgon Point will probably be close to Panther Lake in performance. Will be in $1,000 or less eventually. That's going to be hard for Intel to compete with. Panther Lake needs to be better than what OEMs are worried about. And I go through why OEMs are worried in their history of burned bridges with Intel. Please check out that video. Don't let that one get buried by the algorithm, guys. But like one thing that's become clear is even though Panther Lake does kind of sound impressive, like what I make clear in the Panther Lake leak is that it seems to be trying to bring Arrow Lake CPU performance, including multi-threading, to Lunar Lake power consumption while upping integrated graphics another maybe 20% or so. So maybe beating Gorgon Point by a solid 10 or 20% in integrated graphics. Like if Intel can manage to do that, beat Gorgon Point in integrated graphics, use substantially less energy, have cool features, and launch like a month before Gorgon Point, I think Intel could have something pretty good. And that's what Intel sounds like they might be able to do. But the interesting thing that I outlined in that video is that OEMs just don't believe anything Intel does anymore. So I don't know how long it will take Dylan K for Intel to turn things around. But what I can say is Panther Lake needs to pleasantly surprise OEMs. It needs to. And then Nova Lake needs to be better or at least match Zen 6. Because once you do that, OEMs go, all right. Meteor Lake fell short. Arrow Lake fell short. But then they'll go, Lunar Lake was good. OEMs love Lunar Lake, by the way. They all say that. They'll say, like, leave it. Maybe Lunar Lake will be the turnaround, right? They'll go, Lunar Lake was good. It delivered what they told us it would. It wasn't as good as we wanted, but it did deliver what they said it would. And then they'll go, oh, also did Panther Lake. All right, well, maybe let's take Nova Lake seriously and give a lot of design wins to Intel, and that's how you get it back. Usually you say it takes 4 generations. So it would take Panther Lake delivering what they're saying it will deliver now and surprising OEMs a bit. It will take Nova Lake surprising them as well. And then, of course, Razor Lake coming out on time, 1 year after Nova Lake, a year. I'll get into that leak in the future. Like a year later, though, with the performance that I know that they're trying to hit, just right after that, before Zen 7's even out, maybe being like almost an Alder Lake or Raptor Lake situation, except this time maybe without it breaking, hopefully. And then they'll go, okay, Lunar Lake was okay. It stopped the bleeding. Panther Lake was goodish, but they didn't lie to us. Nova Lake was great. Okay, this seems like things are turning around, and Razor Lake delivered. And then I think they'll be back. But it usually takes 4 generations. And that sounds like a lot, but the caveat I would give is maybe Lunar Lake could be the first one. Maybe it doesn't have to be like Nova Lake if they play their cards right moving forward. So let's see here. Yeah, let's continue let's get to some APU question. Let's finish these before we get to the submitted ones. Magnetic Manual writes and it says Nvidia owning a 5% stake in Intel is not a big concern to me, but how is it allowed that the company with 99.9% of laptop district GPU and the company with 85 to 90% share of laptops and gaming laptops, and they don't have that much. I don't think they have like 80% or 70, I think, but he goes, collaborate and sell product that are compatible with each other. It looks like the era of CPU and GPU cross compatibility with industry standard PCIe is over starting in 2028. This feels bad for consumers, even if NVLink makes technical sense for NVIDIA and Intel. Well, look, I think we were going to move to an APU era for laptops no matter what. I'm not really that concerned about that. I think moving forward, there will always be some discrete laptop GPUs, but it's probably going to be limited to like the equivalent of like a 9070 XT and up. And when I say 9070 XT, I don't mean the way NVIDIA names their mobile laptop GPUs, where a 5070 is really a freaking like 5060. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying like a 9070 on laptop XT would probably be called what? Like a 9080M, 16 gigabyte. I think that, around 400 millimeters squared, 350 to 450 millimeters squared, that's going to remain in laptop. That's what NVIDIA is using right now, the 5080 die for the 1590 laptop edition. Those will remain. But I think below that, it's going to be rarer and rarer to find things. I think you're going to have a lineup of NVIDIA Intel APUs where they will have a Halo product as strong as a 5070, I guess in the future, 6070 Ti desktop or something maybe. At least 6070 desktop. They'll have their budget offering that's like a 6060 desktop in performance, and then their mini Halo that's 6050. And the same with AMD. I've already leaked. Check out that AT3 and AT4 Zen 6 Medusa leak where I go through that. Like, yeah, look, AMD is going to have a low end card that is Medusa Halo Mini, and that will be what used to be the 50 series on laptop. They're going to have their standard Halo, which will occupy the 60 and 70 series tier of performance in laptop. And then yes, there will be like one discrete GPU at the top. I don't think that's going away magnetic, but any lamentation about PCIe being replaced by NVLink and APUs that don't have cross-compatible swapping, that was always going to happen eventually. Now, as for your concerns about how is the I don't see it the same way as it being a monopoly, to be honest, but I will also just sidestep this question. Anyone that says to me, how are any, like, specifically the US government allowing whatever monopoly? Because there's like 10 fucking monopolies already in the US. I mean, Google needs to be broken up, Meta needs to be broken up. They own Instagram and Facebook. I mean, I don't need me to go on this huge rant. Half of these companies should be broken up. I think Nvidia, Intel is the least of our issues at this point. I like, so let's just leave it at that. Like, how is this? I don't know. How are all these other companies allowed to exist? That's my answer. Um, and by the way, on that note, to anyone that would like say, well, that's not good capitalism, blah, blah, blah. We would never get more capitalism than if there were more companies competing, right? Directly, without being part of a big umbrella. Like, that would actually lead to even more capitalism. So I don't know though. Or I do know, but I don't know if I want to say anything else. No News writes in and says, what is the basis in your confidence that AMD can gain market share in laptop? Given that AMD will remain competitive or even dominant in CPU and APU, they still have history of mediocre relationships with laptop makers, and Lenovo seems to like them a lot now. And I believe MSI is moving towards them, Dell's moving towards them. So I wouldn't agree with that. I think that's changing. What is changing in AMD OEM relations? Oh, there. And will the market respond? So yeah, I already answered that part of it. No News, that I've already said this before. I've heard that MSI is just moving away from Intel. That's huge. MSI was like a giant Intel sycophant for a while there. So, and then you also have, I mean, what just a couple gens ago, we finally got Razer laptops with AMD CPUs that were sold fantastically, I believe. You know, you have Dell now showing AMD on their roadmaps. My God, what they used to say, what Dell is the greatest. It was something in the greatest company money could buy, or like whatever. Like Intel like used to bribe Dell. Like the fact that Dell's looking to work with AMD a lot, and Lenovo just love, and HP love AMD right now, from what I hear. So that relationship's changing quite a lot. So let's leave that there. And then what gives me confidence that AMD can gain market share in laptop though? Because I've seen I have these companies' roadmaps. And when I look at the Medusa Halo, the Zen 7 Halo roadmaps, they look way more impressive to me than what anything Intel's going to have until like mid 2027. Like Panther Lake looks like it could be solid, and I hope it is. But yet, like, Gorgon Point's going to be close and cheaper. Strix Halo still could get down to nearly the same price as Panther Lake from what I'm seeing, and it's stronger. Panther Lake would be more efficient and still have its own niche, but like I think Strix and Gorgon will take more market share. And by the end of next year, you're going to have Zen 6 APUs that look quite a bit more impressive to me than Nova Lake APUs, even if I'm excited to see what Nova Lake does, especially on desktop. I mean, I think Zen 6 and Zen 7 APUs look much more impressive to me than the Celestial APUs that I've seen Intel's working on for Nova Lake and Racer Lake. That's my answer. Like, what gives me confidence? Because AMD's taking market share year over year, and they keep doing it, and it looks like they have an even greater advantage in the future. Woody Chang writes in, with the new investments to Intel by the U.S. government and Nvidia, what is the expectations from Intel insiders regarding further layoffs? Is Lip-Bu Tan going to continue to trim Intel despite the increased money on hand? There's both a lot of excitement with some people at Intel, and then other people are like, literally one person told me at a literal water cooler, apparently at Intel, they overheard someone just saying, yeah, I don't know. I think it may have been the ARC team. They're just saying, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully I can, I only need 5 more years before I get my pension or something. So there's a lot of people at Intel that are just hoping to eke by another couple of years before they're laid off, which means a lot of them expect way more layoffs. You know, will there be some hirings? Of course. But yeah, a lot of people expect layoffs too. Didn't we have one more thing I wanted to get here? I thought there was another question about Intel GPUs. Let's see. Where was that? I don't know. I don't see it. But I think now let's get to some APU talk, shall we? Because we got quite a few tipped questions. Zen 6. Medusa versus Nova Lake. All righty. Thank you for being patient. Okay. So, Naughty DJ Aftershock writes in like he so often does during the live streams. Thank you for your support. It says, I know that Zen 6 Medusa and Nova Lake S are just around the corner, but oh no. But Bartlett Lake. Every live stream, Bartlett Lake. Bartlett Lake is so incredible. I mean, 10 nanometer, that's like 5 times the nanometers of 2. All right. Successful troll. I couldn't even finish your submission, DJ Aftershock, because I'm so used to people asking me about Bartlett Lake and going, who cares? We're on 2 nanometer next year. Who cares about 10? Successful troll. Thank you for your support. Hunger the Die Merchant writes in and says, as a Hawkpoint laptop owner, I'm looking forward to the FSR Redstone update. Is there any new info on Redstone to hold us over until Medusa Halo? No, I mean, I haven't asked about it a ton. I think I put out in my last live stream some updates about it. And then, look, I've said that they should have FSR 3. I'm sorry, RDNA 3 should get FSR 4 by early next year. And that at least officially they weren't planning to support RDNA 2. But what's interesting is AMD leaked RDNA 2 code that was used to make RDNA 2 run FSR 4, and apparently it can run kind of well. Obviously, there's a performance hit. I know that at quality settings, but apparently at performance settings, it looks better than FSR 3.1 in quality mode, while still giving you like whatever it is, like a 20-30% performance boost. So I think AMD should launch an RDNA 2 FSR 4 mode that is one setting, just performance, and it gives you a taste of how good FSR 4 is, as long as it looks clearly better than 3.1. I think it'd be a good marketing move too, and it would also extend the life of the Steam Deck too, and hopefully, by the way, extend the life of the PS5 and Xbox Series S and X. So yeah, I don't have any updates besides stuff I've already said. Thank you for the tip though, and I can just say that I'll be watching to see if they will bring it to RDNA 2 now, because it's fascinating that I was told they weren't planning to, and yet clearly they could make it run that way if they wanted to. Spencer Walker writes in and says, did you see the Valve Fremont benchmark? It looked like a Skunkworks project, like the prototype Steam Deck with Vega graphics. Hoping Valve drops an $800 PC. I hope they drop a $600 PC. Why are we, just because Xbox is $1,000? That destroys the iBuy power Best Buy pre-builds. Well, yeah, we'll see. I still think that if Valve makes a home console, they're not going to target killing like Xbox Magnus. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would suspect what they would target is having like a handheld that can play games at 1440p 60 or something. So, like 4 times the performance of a Steam Deck at least. And then they would just overclock that and then make that some little, puck. Like, again, I keep holding this up, like maybe like a little home console this big that has like the Steam Deck APU in it. And then that thing is just pushed to like 3 gigahertz or 4 gigahertz or whatever they end up going to. Not 4, I shouldn't say that. Now everyone's going to say I said 4 gigahertz. They push it to 3 gigahertz or 3.3 gigahertz, and then the handheld runs at 2 gigahertz. And then, you get a solid console that's as good as a low-end gaming PC. I don't think they're going to go for like a PS6 Xbox Magnus killer, though. And I don't think they should, because I think we're at a point now where as long as that thing with like, let's say 24 compute units at 3 gigahertz plus can do 1440p 60, and it certainly could, maybe not in Borderlands 4 though, but that would be enough. And that's really what you want to do. We don't need more competition at the $2,000, the $1,000 area, and $800 is close to that. What I think is we need more console competition in the $400 to $600 range, because that seems to be becoming seriously neglected lately. And I would think that's what Valve would probably target, knowing them. All right, let's see. Yeah, I got a hard out, I would say, in about 10 minutes. So any final questions, get them out. And let's make sure we get through all of these Valve Xbox questions. Okay. Dwight Baldwin writes in and says, I think last year you said motherboard makers gave Intel preferred treatment over AMD due to market share. Yep. Now that things are different, do you expect that to change? Yes. Easy question. Thank you, Dwight. Sorry, it was a quick answer. Absolutely. MSI is moving for more AMD support. I've directly heard this. Yes, they're moving. And now you see Sapphire arriving too. So that's cool, right? Flamin' Helmet writes in and says, "Why is everybody yapping about monopoly when AMD did the same thing when they bought ATI?" I pointed that out. Like, why is AMD allowed to own Radeon if, and ATI? It's just because Nvidia is richer. But a monopoly isn't a monopoly just because they have all the money. A monopoly is a monopoly if they own like either a wide, it can go vertical or horizontal monopoly that no one can compete with. And I don't really see that as being the case with Intel and Nvidia, because Nvidia and Intel together would be making the same products AMD makes. Now, if Nvidia went out and started buying up GDDR7 makers that didn't let AMD use them to make their, or like, LPDDR5X manufacturers, so that AMD couldn't get that to make their APUs that compete with Nvidia Intel APUs, that would be a monopolistic move. But Nvidia being bigger than AMD and owning the same types of companies AMD does, that's not a monopoly unless AMD is a monopoly. Let's see. Beanie King writes in and says, "I'm loving the Prof G Markets podcast, by the way. Thanks for that recommendation." Yeah, I love great podcast. If you want a solid, straight down the line markets podcast that's also funny and also thoughtful. Like, they're not like, no offense to CNBC. They're not just like, let's say whatever the corporation told us to say and make a bunch of bad predictions. They actually get their predictions usually right. I would say if you like broken silicon for tech stuff, you like Prof G Markets for economic stuff and money stuff. Anyways, though, he goes, when are we getting Elson and Professor Galloway on Broken Silicon, and how do we make that happen? I don't know, man. Email them and see if they would come on. I would need a reason for them to come on, though. I guess we could talk about Nvidia because they talk about Nvidia and Intel a lot right now. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's something to think about. Maybe Ed would come on. I'm a little apprehensive to believe Scott Galloway would give me his time, but I bet Ed might. So, email him, see if he would. We'll see. Mookie X writes in and says, "Did we cover the AMD RAM buffer patent to double DDR5 speeds beyond the channel limit? Could make its way to future Halo products." No, but I'm not someone that usually follows patents that much. I understand there's some channels that do, and they like to talk about them, but I'm going to be honest with you. And this is my perception. Maybe I'm wrong, but 90% of the patents that websites hype up go nowhere. So, will this one go somewhere? Maybe, but like also if I made a video about that, what would the video be? AMD could have more bandwidth. I don't know when. End of video. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not going to make a video just to say this sounds cool, probably. Maybe it could be a minor discussion on broken silicon, but no comment really until we see evidence it's actually in a final product. All right. Dave W. Deathrock writes in and says, "Tom, do you think Microsoft really cares if the Ally X even sells? No. Or are they just looking for beta testers? Yes. For the Windows game mode for the Magnus console early? Yes, I think so. I said that in the beginning. This simply to counter Valve pushing them out of the gaming space. Yes. That is, I believe, the main use of the ROG Xbox Ally X. It is Asus happy to work with Microsoft to get a superior operating system early. Look, the Xbox Ally X was just whatever Asus was going to launch this year, whether Xbox helped them or not. That was already going to come out, but they're probably happy to have Xbox do some extra free marketing for them, put an Xbox sticker on it for that 10 to 30 million people, as I keep covering, that buy anything that's called Xbox. And then Microsoft gets to beta test their stuff early with a partner who will work with them closely. That's what's going on. Yeah. Let's see. Let's get to let's save the Ally X stuff for in a second. Techno Lads writes in and says, "Since AT3 is 48 compute units, and that's what Medusa Halo will use." Yep, 48 RDNA 5 compute units in Medusa Halo in what? Like a year and a half from now. And that should beat the 5070 Ti mobile and quite handedly. Yeah, probably. And be on the heels of a 5080M. Maybe. How do we think this will affect Medusa Halo's use within gaming? So it'll be better at gaming than Strix Halo. And again, I watch my Panther Lake video, people. I have actually a whole, like a fourth of it is kind of looking at AMD's answer to Panther Lake. And a big portion of that is I believe Strix Halo is going to get significantly cheaper. It's downstairs right now. I can't hold it up and show it, but I have a Strix Halo laptop that I got for $2,500. It is 64 gigabytes of RAM. And I got that the 32 CU model with 12 cores. I got that like 3 months ago. So 3 months ago, I got a laptop that used to be $3,500. for 2,500. Wow. And now you can get the 395 128 gigabyte model for near 2,500. Now you can get the 8-core 32 compute unit model for around 1,800 on HP, I believe. So you can see the price is going to keep coming down. And there's new companies announcing cheaper versions. This is a 3-year, the HP model, 3-year warranty, OLED, 120 hertz display, incredible features and support. That's going to always cost more than it should for the performance because of that extra professional support and yada, yada, yada. But I still think you're going to see that thing drift down to like $1,800. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on any expensive model of Panther Lake. And then I think you're going to see Gorgon Point go much cheaper than that. And you're going to see new laptops come out, cheaper models with Strix Halo that are probably 1,000 to 1,500 that directly compete with 5060s while giving you more VRAM. So I think this idea of like, how will this, affect Medusa's use in gaming? There's nothing stopping Strix Halo from being used as a gaming APU, except for the fact that they can't keep it in stock, usually around $2,000. Like the Asus Flow keeps selling out almost every time they put it on sale. I keep seeing the HP one sell out. Yes, they keep lowering the price lower, more and more and more, but they're still quite a ways away from $1,500. That's why you're seeing Strix Halo in a limited amount of products that cost a lot, because they keep selling gangbusters. And it's because they're unique, but nothing's stopping this from being a gaming APU besides the fact that it can make more money in other places right now. But I think that'll start changing next year. So yeah, what do I think of Medusa Halo having 48 RDNA 5 compute units? I think that will be a lot faster than Strix Halo. And I think it will be used in gaming more because by then that will be more standard place for that sort of product. Technical Lads writes, no, wait, let's get to more of these more APU-y questions. So let me put down a timestamp here, 1:06:45. I'm going to start rapid firing these because I'm running out of time. I've got a thing to go to. AI Soldier 789 writes in, Borderlands on Switch 2 is postponed until they can fix the performance issues. So the argument just to use DLSS didn't work there. What does it say about the future of the Unreal Engine 5 games on the Switch 2? I mean, I think what we're clearly seeing is half of the issues with Borderlands 4 is that they just should have delayed the game. I don't think it's all Unreal Engine 5. I think you've seen in recent releases that also use Unreal and Digital Foundry's testing that it's obviously mostly a Borderlands 4 issue, actually. It's still a bad look for Unreal Engine 5, though. So I think Unreal Engine has really got to think about what they're doing with their products and what games come out, because everyone's starting to blame Unreal Engine. If I'm Epic, I don't like that. So that's that side of it. But look, I will say this, a patch came out to Borderlands 4 last night, and I played it with Dan, and it did run better. It did. It ran quite a bit better for me on the PS5 Pro. So they are making progress. Again, the game probably should have launched October 15th or something, like 16th. That's probably when the game should have come out. It seems like they finished the game, at least on console, squashed almost all of the bugs that stop you from playing it. And then they just didn't do that month of polishing the performance. And now they're doing it. And that's stupid. So and that doesn't surprise me at all. They probably want to fix all of the versions now so that it gets a lot of good fanfare. And then my guess would be like right before Christmas or early next year is when they'll finally have the Borderlands 4 version come out. But until they stop the bloodletting and the bad press they're getting on the other platforms, it doesn't really make sense to try to launch on Switch 2. It just doesn't. They should pull resources away to fix the other versions, and it seems like they are. Matthew Cassell says, as a Switch 2 developer, we still don't have access to dev kits yet, and Nintendo is making us support platforms we can't test, and that's extremely abusive in my opinion. We delisted our title on Switch 2, Path of the Titans. Do you have any thoughts? Nintendo just laid off a bunch of their customer support too, and in 2024, they fired a bunch of their game testers. Right now, they don't even have enough testers to check all the updates. I don't know. I don't know what's going on at Nintendo. I hear pretty bad things pretty universally from developers trying to work with them. And I don't know that I have much to add to that, except that, yeah, I don't know. All right, let me do X2 Elite here. Mihir Pathek writes in and says, Snapdragon X2 Elite benchmark smoked both Apple and x86. Considering strong competition in laptop mini PC market, do you think we'll now see low TDP Medusa point and Halo laptops in 2026 with more OEMs? Well, those are going to come out when they're going to come out. I think you would, if AMD had to panic, they would just make more Strix Halo and make them cheaper. But here's my answer to your claims about the X2 Elite, and I am going to consider them claims. Matthew Cassels writes in and says 84% of laptop owners believe Snapdragon delivers premium performance. That's something Qualcomm said, Mahir. Do you think that's true? Do you think 84% of people think Snapdragon is premium right now? Because I can tell you the people I talk to in retail think it fucking sucks and they can't sell a goddamn one of these things and they're all getting returned. So here's my opinion, and I'm going to skip the rest of the X2 questions about Qualcomm. I'm sure I'll talk about it more with the Fox on Broken Silicon soon, anyways. Guys, basically all the claims Qualcomm made with their previous product were crap, and the product did not perform how they said it would. I will believe it when I see it. Let's wait for reviews. Because when you see things like 84% of people consider Snapdragon delivers premium performance, that's horseshit. We know that's not true. The amount of bad reviews and returns I'm hearing, no. So I will believe in Qualcomm when Qualcomm releases a product that delivers what they said it would do. Joa Fontoura writes in and says, "Hi, Tom. I'd like to know how you think AMD will segment Ryzen 5 versus Zen 6, 10 or 8 cores. Also, if you'd be possible to see 16-core chips using two 12-core CCDs with some cores disabled." I find that unlikely. I've gone over this a million times. Watch my previous Zen 6 discussions. Seriously, go to my previous live streams. You can see I do full Zen 6 segmentation discussions. You did tip me, though. And I want to reward you for that, at least some here, and go, what do I think they're going to do? And it's what I think. It's not what I know. But what I think is the top R9 will be something like and I don't know if they'll change it to AI naming, but let me just use the current naming so we know what I'm talking about. Like they'll call it like a 10960X, and that will be 24 cores at like 800. And then I think they'll go down to like 650 for 20 or 700, 650, somewhere around there. Whatever the next tier down is, will be 20 cores. And I think that they will call the 10950X, giving it 20 instead of 16. And then I believe they will go down to 12 cores as like the 10900X. And that will be like 500 or something. So only one CCD, but it is 12 cores like before, just cheaper. And because it's unified, it's better at gaming. And then I think the 10800X and X3D or 700X will be 10 cores, and the 10600X will be 8. That is my suspicion, right? And I think anything below that, they'd probably just use like 3 nanometer APUs, which will cost less to make anyways, rather than disable anything down to like anything. I don't think they'll do 6-core yields in any large numbers. I mean, eventually they'll probably have some drag yields they cut in half, just like they cut 8-core chiplets to 4 cores, up until now, every now and then. But I think that's going to be very rare. And that's why I think the 10600X, will either be an 8-core or it might even be a 10-core, but use the Zen 3 Medusa 1 APU. What was the size of that thing? I think it was like 200 millimeter square, but it's all 3 nanometer. And they'll just use the drag yields for that and give it like 8 to 10 cores of 3 nanometers Zen 6 or something. That'd be my suspicion. Or some other thing. There's Bumblebee, but I don't think they're going to be disabling. I'd be very surprised if they kept 6 cores at $300, and it's because they cut a 12-core chiplet down to 6. Okay, I think I am caught up on tipped questions. Few more rapid fire. RTX 6000. Technolads writes in, when will we start hearing proper 6000 series news? Actually, let me put a timestamp for this, as I did tease that I would talk about this before the live stream went up. RTX 6000. When do I think we'll start hearing proper RTX 6000 series news? And for those who missed it, from what I'm hearing from people at Nvidia, that Rubin CPX thing is not the 6090. In fact, I was told today by someone at Nvidia that the display out people on Twitter said they saw was like encoder decoders. So no, the 69 is not the 6090 from what I'm told. And that means that, I think the 6000 series probably launches beginning of 2027. And that means if you think about when we'll hear proper stuff, I was told by someone at Nvidia that they definitely are working on GeForce full steam ahead right now. Someone says 2027. Yeah, look, guys, Super isn't even out. Think about it. 6000 series, 5000 series launched beginning of 2025. And then I think 5000 Super launches N25 beginning 26. So right in the middle. And then 12 months after that is when they give you 6000. It's a stopgap. I think there will be an RDNA 4 refresh that is a stopgap until RDNA 5 in 2027 as well. So, yeah. That is what I expect. Let me write that down too. And yeah, I mean, look, well, we'll see if Nvidia gets hacked like they did before. Then we'll probably know everything within 6 months. But otherwise, I think I'll probably start to know a lot about it. I give it half a year. Because then we'll be in 2026, like quarter two. I imagine things will be coming out by then. That's usually when they can't hide things anymore. Shay writes in, do you know why DLSS and FSR force us to choose a mode instead of supporting arbitrary input resolutions? It'd be cool to just move a slider and select what percent of output resolution we want to do. So I actually sent this, Shay, to someone at Nvidia, and they said you can already do that through the GeForce drivers. But yes, it's not usually a slider in games, and they don't know why. So I actually asked someone at Nvidia. Falto writes in, is it just me, or do a lot of Unreal Engine 5 games look slightly ugly relative to 4? I didn't play a lot of 4 games. I don't really know. For example, Final Fantasy 7, which is UE4. Okay. Versus Silent Hill F. To me, 7 looks sharper and better visually than Silent Hills F. Yeah, also Silent Hills F has horrible performance from what I saw. Just something in UE5 makes images look blurry and grainy. Overall, I'm disappointed in the visuals. What could be causing this? Or am I crazy to think of this? Yeah, I don't know, man. I think a lot of games probably should have just used Unreal Engine 4 instead of 5. I mean, there's a party that wonders if Borderlands 4 should have just used Unreal Engine 3 again. I mean, that would have probably been stupid, but what do you think about it? Like, was it really so bad that we loaded like 10 areas instead of one big open world map? Because that seemed to quadruple our performance, but I don't know. I don't have much to say about Unreal Engine 5. Save those questions for developers. AI in charge of Xbox pricing writes in and says, walking into the end of the year, it's jam-packed with good games. Borderlands 4, Dying Light, Ghost of Yogatai, Battlefield, all of these are coming out. What are you excited to play until GTA 6 kills everything? Battlefield 6. Battlefield 6 and Borderlands 4. I played Ghost of Tsushima, and it didn't click / I just didn't give it a fair chance, so I can't see myself getting Yogatai anytime soon. I mean, I kind of want to play Horizon Forbidden West finally before another Ghost game. So it's going to be Battlefield and Borderlands. Wolfie writes in, if you had a chance to speak with anyone involved in writing NVIDIA drivers, is it possible to offload ray tracing compute into a second card? I don't see any plans to do that, especially if by second card you mean like a second card in your PCIe. The more we get to higher performance, the more latency is a huge penalty to performance, and that means more and more things are going to get closer and eventually probably just be APUs. So I don't see the second card thing happening. Another Chris writes in and says, hey, Tom, which side do you think needs to catch up more, hardware or software? A lot of devs hesitate to optimize software. I think software needs to catch up way more. Definitely that. And I think that's it for the tipped questions. Yeah, I think that's going to do it. I think I will talk about more ARC stuff in the future, but I've got a hard out and I've got to go. So please, everybody, one more time, please like the video right now. After you like it, check if you are subscribed to Moore's Law is Dead on YouTube, and please subscribe then ring the bell button. We've got more content out coming soon, and if you have even an extra $1 to give the channel, join the Patreon right now. You can ask the Fox questions. Will be the next guest. He has a GPD Win 5 with Strix Halo. He has a lot of thoughts on the Xbox ROG Ally X. He's already tested it himself. You can ask him questions at the lowest tier. So please join us on the Patreon as well. And again, like the video, share the video, spread the word. That could really help after I think the algorithm buried quite a few of our recent videos. And watch the Panther Lake video and share it. Watch the Panther Lake video. I know it's Intel and it's a laptop CPU, and that makes a lot of you ignore it, but I put a shit ton of work into that thing. And if you're even interested in AMD, I'm sure you will enjoy it. It's one of the videos I put the most work into. So please check out that. And otherwise, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, everybody. Have a great weekend.